Namaskar and welcome to this special episode of What Does This Data Say? I am Ajay Prakash. I'm sure many of you would be aware that the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz was in India last week on a 2 day visit. Now, this was his first visit to India, and there were several things lined up for discussion between him and our Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi. During his visit to Bangalore, there was one statement which he made which has caught the attention of many Indians. He said that Germany wants to make it easier for Indian IT professionals to get work visas within Germany. Now, to talk on this subject, there can be no one better than Anupam Chaturvedi, who is my schoolmate and currently the president of the Indo-German Chamber of Commerce. Anupam, a wonderful person that he is a physicist by education and a banker by profession. He was instrumental in setting up the India operations of DZ Bank AG almost 25 to 30 years ago. And since then, he has remained with the bank as the chief India representative. My discussions with Anupam are in two parts. In the first part, I talk about the opportunities that the Indian students will get in Germany, as well as the openings and the job opportunities that are going to be there because of a liberalized visa regime. In the second part, I focus more on the SME sector and how the industries of India can leverage this relationship to build up their businesses in Germany. For students who are desirous of pursuing a higher degree in Germany, the biggest advantage is that the education there is free. And this makes it studying there so much easier for most of the Indian students as you don't need to apply for huge student loans. Secondly, at the moment, Germany is running out of workers. They need at least 400,000 new immigrants every year for the next several years. The reason is very simple. Germany is a country with really old population and they need young students and employees from outside the EU to sustain their economy. Upon completion of your studies, you get 18 months to search for a job during which you can stay in Germany, and after 2 years, you become eligible for a permanent residency. So let's get on with this interview, which I had recorded a day earlier.
गुड मॉर्निंग अनुपम नमस्कार आपका स्वागत है
Thank
अनुपम
you.
is the chief representative of DZ Bank in India. In fact, he was the person who formed the India business for this bank. Now, if many of you don't know about this bank, DZ Bank is one of the largest bank, I think the second largest bank of Germany, and it's the largest cooperative central bank in that country. And they say there are 30 million clients and over 8,500 branches. Anupam heads the India office of this bank, though they don't do any normal banking in India, but they help a lot of MSMEs and businesses to do businesses outside India. Now, in addition, Anupam is also the president of the Indo-German Chamber of Commerce. So over to you, Anupam. If I made any mistake, you can rectify it, and a quick introduction about yourself.
Thank you, Ajay, so much. By and large, the data you have is perfectly all right. The only thing is that we are not the second largest bank, but we are the second largest banking group. So, like in India, we call the banks as universal banks. In Europe, they call it as an all finance group. So, it's
Okay.
an all finance group, and the bank has a very peculiar kind of structure which
Mhm.
in normal parlance is not understandable, particularly in the Indian context, because the bank operates on three simultaneous functions.
Mhm.
One is that it is the central institute, not the central bank, but the central institute for the cooperatives in Germany. The second is it acts as a holding structure for the rest of financial services. So we offer the whole plethora of financial services are under our umbrella. That is the holding structure. And the third is to act as a commercial bank in its own right.
Right.
So I belong to the third part, but then service the all the parts. So all the three parts are serviced by us here, but I belong to the commercial arm of the bank. It is the second largest banking group in that sense, and all the group institutions which are attached to us are amongst the top three players in Germany. So they in their own right are extremely large, but
Okay.
they do not use DZ as a prefix or suffix. So the
Uh-huh.
information is not so widespread that they all belong to our group.
Okay.
Uh, so we have, let's say, the largest asset management company, we have the largest home financing company. So all those kind of things. Um, in India, we was set up in 1995. We started looking for a setup in 1995. That's when I joined the bank, and so I set up the office here because we didn't go for a full-fledged branch operation. So I set up the office here, and we got the approval in February 1996. So it has been that era. The main things, the main financing we are indulging in is wholesale banking kind of a thing. So we are bankers to banks in one part of our business, and we deal with normally the larger corporates for their large projects for long-term financing on the debt side. So which is not so much capital market related, but it is pure debt, which has to do something with Germany. So that's our entire function here. And in all these years, we have made a mark for ourselves in the sense we should normally have been a branch in India. But from our experience, we found that India being a subcontinent, a single branch or two or three branches may not be sufficient to cater to the requirements of India.
Right.
So that's briefly what it is. Yeah.
Good. Good. So let me just tell the viewers the discussion that we are going to have today. See, the context was that we as Indians, or especially the Indian students here, know very little about Germany. When it comes to going abroad, they will know very much about US, they know about UK, they know about Australia. And recently, the Chancellor of Germany, when he was in India, he had mentioned that he would be working on facilitating more students from India to come to Germany. So there would be some changes in the visa rules, etc. But then when I went and saw the data, to my surprise, I found that the Indian population, which I'll show you also later in a graph, is very, very small in Germany. Can you tell the viewers that why Indians have been not preferring Germany to go there or study there, and how it's going to help us if the visa rule change? Will more people start going there?
So yeah, two or three factors. One data correction is that there are very large number of Indian students now in Germany, as compared to when I started in '95. It was, just to give an example, it was unique for most of our colleagues in the bank to actually physically see an Indian. They had hardly seen an Indian, so the Indian population was so far and few. Uh, I remember at that time there used to be barely about 1,000 Indian students in the University of Aachen, and even a smaller country like South Korea was sending more students at that time.
Right.
So there is a institute called DAAD, DAAD. We kind of push this institution to see that more Indian students reach Germany. And today we have 30,000 Indian students in Germany. So that's a large population. The problem with lesser students going there was at that time that they were not allowed to seek employment after their education.
Okay.
So that was a great dissuader for them. So they couldn't stay back, couldn't earn back the money they have spent on their education. So that was a dissuader, which has changed now, so you can work.
Okay.
The second disadvantage was that most of the education was in German language, which again has changed. Most of the medium of instruction has shifted to English.
Oh,
So
okay.
that's the other convenience. Um, Now, recently, Chancellor Scholz, when he was here, this was, by the way, his first visit to India.
Right.
And our Prime Minister has visited Germany more often than the Chancellor coming here. And one of the significant agreements which he signed was the mobility and migration agreement,
Mhm.
which they are willing to spend about 10 billion euros in skilling and providing employment to Indians in Germany. Now, one of
Okay.
the main reasons why this has not happened so far, of course, is the largest, I would say, is the problem that Indians find it difficult to adapt to the language requirement. That is, they have to learn German. But I can only say from my own experience, I don't know any German myself, but almost I would say about 70% of Germany understands and speaks in
Right.
English.
Right.
So it gets very easy. The second dissuader was the food, because it's largely a non-vegetarian country. They eat largely non-vegetarian food. Fortunately, when I joined the bank, there was a fashion for vegetarian food, and at
Mhm.
that time it was called Ayurveda food. So
Oh, really?
Ayurveda food was costlier than non-vegetarian food. It was
Right.
considered to be fine dining, but it was available. So I didn't have to compromise on that. So I remained to be vegetarian. So, and the third is the social factor. You know, Germany has been receiving uh, excessive amount of immigrants from neighboring countries, particularly from Turkey, from now from Syria, from
Yeah.
other regions,
Right.
that
Right.
their local population is getting completely overwhelmed by the number of people who are there. The third and the last factor is that Germany's economy's backbone is the so-called small and medium-sized enterprises, which are called Mittelstand in Germany.
Mhm.
Now, these Mittelstand are contributing about 80% of the economy. Now,
Okay.
this Mittelstand largely is the genesis of Second World War, post Second World War kind of companies. Now they are looking for succession. Now, for succession, their children were not very interested in continuing those businesses. So, almost I would say 60 odd percent of these companies have been taken over by Chinese.
Oh.
Indians have not reached there
Mhm.
because India is very, very different constitutionally in the way we do our business. So, China depends a lot on foreign direct investment to do their business. We
Right.
don't depend so heavily because we have a strong industry ourselves here. So likewise, we're looking at more the domestic market than the
Mm.
international market. So all those factors contributing to lesser of Indians being present in Germany, or for that matter, in the continental European countries. Yeah.
Right. A few things which I have read is that regarding the students, one is that there is no tuition fees in Germany, so that's a big plus for Indian students going there. They at least save quite a bit. They only have to pay for their sustenance. And second is there's this number, though Chancellor Scholz never pointed out how many visas will be there, but the figure seems to be pretty high. Someone is quoting around 30,000 visas will be released annually. So is it time for now students to seriously start taking Germany as an alternative and looking at this country?
Yes, absolutely. because as I said, now two or three positives. One is the medium, of course, visa has been liberalized. The first priority is to students. So because of this mobility migration agreement, the first priority is students, professional workers, because they need a lot of professional workers to migrate to Germany.
Okay.
And the second is the medium of education is largely English. Plus, I would say from my own experience that there is more acceptability of Indians than other communities in Germany, particularly in the western part of Germany. There are some prejudices still existing in the eastern part of Germany, but the western part is welcoming with open arms. And in fact, they like Indians, so they would prefer Indians to anybody else in their
Okay.
own country. Yeah.
Okay. So that's a positive thing, at least for the Indians now. Now, second part of this presentation, which is more related to understanding the country. When I went through the import export data between the trade which is done between India and Germany, I find that though Germany exports constitute to roughly over 3% of our total export, but there is no one single big item that goes to Germany. There are many small things which we do, unlike what we have with, say, US, where, say, diamonds and jewelry is a big chunk which we export there. And secondly, the growth also, I find, with the trade between India and Germany is growing at a much lesser pace than with some other countries where India is doing this. So traditionally, what has been the trade with Germany, and why this trade is sort of becoming at a stagnant level?
Yeah, so two things happening. One is that unlike most of the other countries where a lot of FMCG products are imported by India and likewise exported from India to other countries, Germany is largely machinery.
Right.
So Germany as a country is machinery oriented. So the number of transactions are far fewer than you would see. That's one factor. The second is that Germany is, I would say, extremely fixated on the quality.
Right.
And one of the problems that we have had in India is consistency of our quality. We can
Right.
produce that quality, but we are not consistent with that. So that has been another fallacy. The third is that communication channels between India and continental Europe are fairly limited. So let's say India has now declared that it wants to be part of the supply chain after COVID. Uh, this should have been always the case, because in
Mhm.
our case, our kind of MSME, as we call them, micro, small, medium enterprises, are extremely vibrant. They have great production quality, but no one knows about them. So they are
Mm.
pretty happy with the region where they are operating. They don't have so much of global ambitions, I would say. And so they're very confined. So there had to be channels which should have propagated or should have announced these capabilities. So Germans, by and large, were not aware about the supply possibility from India. And likewise the reverse. So Indian psyche is to get the equipment which is cheapest, does the work but is the cheapest. Germany does not operate in that zone at all. So whatever will be the Mercedes quality kind of. So whatever is, even if you buy a small, let's say, blade for sharpening your pencil, and you want a German blade, it will be at least three times costlier than what you get from China or elsewhere, or India itself produces.
Right.
Those factors have been inhibiting, but The good part is last year, the trade has increased by almost 20%,
Okay.
both exports and imports. As far as exports from India are concerned, I pointed out in our core strength as Germany recognizes because of lack of, as I said, lack of information. The core is essentially IT related, essentially textiles, leathers, and chemical. So that's where they believe that India has good possibilities. But that is changing. The perception is changing because the interaction between the industry has increased manifold. So there's more flow of information now. Yeah.
Yeah. Especially when it comes to IT. I have a background in IT, and we did a lot of projects with German companies, and you are very right. Their quality was, A plus plus category. I mean, they
Yeah.
would never compromise, and that's why getting the final acceptance done was a huge task. When these projects are done, it wasn't so easy. They would go through it very minutely. Now, since India is a major exporter of IT services, we do to 200 to 50 billion dollars worth of service export. Why Germany is not becoming a preferred place for at least growth of Indian IT? Do you see that in the future, in the coming years, there is a big opportunity for IT services?
So the most important factor from my uh, point of view is that if even if you see the normal export import trade between the two countries, the trade seems smaller because there's a lot of German companies who are present in India. So if you see from any other country's perspective, we have more than 2,000 German companies which are present in India. So
Okay.
the trade automatically reduces because it is foreign direct investment that gets into India. Likewise, for let's say the IT industry, a lot of IT companies, including TCS, including Infosys, all of them have fairly large establishments now in Germany
Okay.
because they need that because some part of it, while large part of programming is done in English, but there is some specific requirements which have to be done in German, and they find that if people are stationed in Germany, they are able to do it much more efficiently than sitting in India and doing it in German.
Okay.
So that language issue also means that a lot more IT companies, I would imagine, would migrate part of their offices into Germany rather than doing it out of
Okay.
India. Now there is a bit of a historical background to that Germany had about 15 years back decided that they wanted more IT specialists, and there was, I don't know whether you remember that period, there were kind of green cards being issued
Correct.
initially for 10,000 Indians to go there, and the first 2000 went to Germany, didn't have very good experience, came back and said we will do it out of India, but will not be stationed in Germany. But that time has passed by. So now it's a new character to Germany because the whole country realizes that they need more people, primarily because of the demographic shift, where almost 65-70% of their population is beyond the age of 60. So they need a lot more workers. Likewise, the reverse has happened that if you look at SAP, SAP is quadrupling its employment in India. So they are expanding so hugely that
Okay.
whatever SAP can do from India for global clientele is being done here. So it's that kind of shift that is happening. Trade may not still remain to be the mainstay. Each country will be investing more into each other. Yeah.
Good. So the last question: how can Indo Chamber, German Chamber of Commerce, can you help Indian SMEs to migrate their products or services or even the establishment, what kind of support can they expect from your organization if they
So,
want to do business in
yeah,
Germany?
just to give you an impression, Indo-German Chamber is one of the oldest bilateral chamber of commerce in India.
Right,
So
right.
it is now 67 years old. It is the largest bilateral chamber of commerce globally for any country. So it has the largest membership. Now, primarily, it services the medium-sized metal-stand companies, as they are called, small and medium-sized
Right,
enterprises, because the large companies find their own ways of doing business in different countries. They do require our assistance for largely, I would say, advocacy, that
okay,
there are certain larger issues which require to be resolved with the government, or there are some policy initiatives which have to be altered. So that's limited part for the larger companies.
right,
These are smaller companies. Now, smaller companies both ways. So a German company investing in India, Indian company investing in Germany is a major focus. So
okay,
that's what we cater to. And you would be aware that the government of India has recently launched a program which is called Make in India Mittelstand. It's just to promote German companies to get into India, and that we are supporting. That's part of Indo-German Chambers initiative. Likewise, Indian companies going there. Unfortunately, against, let's say, 2,000 German companies invested in India, there are only 200 Indian companies which are invested in Germany,
correct,
because Indian companies, as I said, are fairly happy with their domestic presence. Plus, they first prefer to go to English speaking countries.
correct.
And Germany is getting into their focus, but not as large. But that's the support. So we provide the whole range of services,
Okay,
from the regulatory perspective, from the physical perspective, in the sense how do you maintain your books of accounts there, and do you have consultants to assist you with that, making your application, getting land allocation, things like that. So we do the whole range of services that are required to shift from Germany to India or India to Germany, and
okay,
largely for the small and medium sized enterprises.
right. Good. All I can say, I think there's a lot of positive things in store for Indians in this Indo-German relationship in the years to come. So thank you very much for joining us today. I bothered you on a Sunday morning, so took away an hour from you, but so nice of you to have agreed. And I hope our listeners or viewers will get something out of today's talk. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you, Ajay, for that opportunity. Yeah. Thanks.